All right, here we are once again with the patch notes for the Bazaar. Today's patch is the 1.6 for February 5th, 2025. It's another pretty big one. And before we start today, I just want to acknowledge some of the problems that have been happening in the last couple of videos I've been doing. We've been reading these patch notes, and unfortunately, due to some clerical errors on behalf of Tempo Storm, a lot of them are just inaccurate or wrong. So I want to acknowledge that when we're reading these today, some of these may be wrong. They could be inaccurate. I'm going to have no way to really tell what's wrong until after the patch lands and we can actually look into seeing what happens. But a lot of the analysis that I'm doing is going to be based on what's written in the patch notes. And if things are wrong and they just aren't accurate, I really can't do much about it. So we're just going to take things at face value most of the time. But as always, just take things with a grain of salt because these notes aren't always correct. So some things could be wrong or missing or omitted, things like that. All right, without further ado, let's get into it because it's another fairly long one today. We're going to try to keep things mostly succinct. Let's go into it. Okay, so the ranking changes have gone live. Previously, there was a way to abuse the ranking system where I won't get into it entirely, but the ideal way to level up was if you were having a bad run, it was simply to just concede after you get to a certain amount of wins. Like once you start feeling like your build is falling off and you don't have much of a chance, just concede. You would be leveling up way more efficiently than just playing out the games all the way. Theoretically, they fixed that, so conceding will no longer be the most efficient way to rank up. No guarantees. I didn't really know the math behind it before, and I definitely don't know the math behind it now. So we'll have to see how the community reacts to this. The big thing here is that all ranks have been reset back to bronze, which is kind of a kick in the pants, man. I took a long time to grind up to, I was almost through diamonds, and I didn't do any concede abuse or anything like that. So now I'm gonna have to grind all the way back up. It's gonna take a while, I think. So that's kind of a shame, but probably needed to keep competitive integrity if that matters to people. Okay, so let's go into these general things. I have no idea who Rit is. I'm not 100% sure if that's like a monster or a shop or anything like that. So we're just going to skip that. Apparently he was offering out of order options. The level up rewards now spawn on your board or stash, so you don't have to click into them. That may affect things that, like when you buy stuff, like for Pyg, when you buy an item, the level up rewards counted for that. And now that they spawn directly on your stash, that may not work anymore, but no guarantees. Updated item drop tables. So now you're less likely to get bronze items the later on the game goes on. That was already the case. I think it's just more aggressive now. Many items have their scaling updated. I think we'll see a lot of those down in the patch notes. In general, bronze tier numbers have been improved and overall scaling between tiers have been flattened somewhat. I think this mostly affects Dooley because Dooley's bronze items were by far the strongest of any of the heroes, but we'll have to see when we get to the changes. Fixed an issue where the level up rewards would provide XP as if they were a regular encounter. This was interesting because I only really became aware of this recently, and everyone kind of thought it was a bug with the rightmost option in the level up rewards, that it wasn't providing XP, but apparently none of them were supposed to provide XP. So now that should make it so that you should never feel bad about picking the rightmost reward, whereas previously you would be giving up 1 XP if you did, sometimes. Fixed an issue where Pearl's dig site was counted as a merchant. Didn't really know what that was, but sure, it's fixed now, I guess. Enchantment altar level ups now offers 1 enchantment altar, and the artist instead of... Oh, okay, interesting. So now, instead of 3 enchantment altars, when you get to level 10 and level 19, I think it is, you now only get 1 altar, which limits your choices a lot. But if you don't like that choice, you can now get the artist, and the artist is the one that gives you a random enchantment that you can't see. So this should make the level 10 enchantment a lot less of a guaranteed power spike, because as of right now, most of the time, especially for Dooley players, if you got to level 10 and you got the choice of haste or slow. Those were pretty much the best enchantments in the game, and you could put them on your core. Now that should be a little more rare. So that's a good change. I've been of the opinion that enchantments are far too strong and far too common and far too consistent. So I'm a big fan of this. Not sure how I feel about the artists, because you can luck into things like shiny and icy and golden off of the artist, and those enchantments are either insane on some items or completely worthless on others. So just adds a lot more variance to the game that I'm not 100% sure I'm a fan of. These are just visual effects. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about this. Don't worry about this. This is actually kind of nice. Integer overflow was a problem with basically only a couple of items, crane being one of them. You could essentially get so much damage on your crane that it would go to negative numbers and do no damage just because of how high the numbers got. So that should no longer happen. This is a huge change, massive change. And you can see why they put it up at the top. Most freeze effects now target items of equal or smaller size. And I'm not 100% sure if this includes all freeze enchantments, but if it does, thank God, because the freeze enchantment, besides being weirdly common in Pearl's dig site, was completely busted on some items and completely useless on others. So this should hopefully reduce or remove the persistence of you running into an opponent with like an icy metronome or an icy yo-yo or something like a small, really fast applying item with icy, just freezing your whole board. So that should no longer happen, or at least be a lot less common and a lot less potent. So big fan of this. Icy enchantment, I think, honestly, should have just been removed or at least reworked. And it seems like they did do a rework for it. So we'll see how that lands. It's a very, very potent enchantment. And with how rare it was, but still somewhat common from specific shops, it was a little bit of a high roll. All right. Enchantment changes. We've continued to improve the enchantments on many items. Not very specific. We'll have to just see how this lands. I don't know if they put this in the patch notes anywhere. So this is going to be basically just experiment and see. We'll probably be seeing a lot of these in upcoming videos. Toxic and fiery now maps to the item's base output, similar to shielded and restorative. So I'm hoping this doesn't mean that the poison will scale with the amount of damage an item does, because that would be absolutely insane. I'm hoping this just means like it would do as much poison or burn as the base damage. So like if you had a ballista, it would do 100 poison or 100 burn. I don't know exactly what this means. We'll have to see. There's no way they made it so that it would scale with the damage that you can apply, because if you get like 1,000 damage weapon and you give it toxic, giving it like 1,000 poison would be insane. Maybe it's like a ratio of the damage. Like maybe it will always do 10% of the damage for toxic and like 20 for fiery. We'll have to see how that works. This is an ongoing process. Okay, that's inspires confidence. All right, let's get into the specific hero item changes. And I think a lot of people are going to be happy with this. It looks like they just buffed a lot of underperforming items and gave each hero more tools and more toys to play with, while also just slightly nerfing or in some cases gutting some of the problematic items. So let's get into this as quickly as possible because there are a lot of them. All right. Arbalist fixed an issue where it didn't count as an ammo item. Didn't really run into that. This item was kind of trash before. It was really hard to make work. They made the base damage flat, so it should be doing decent damage at all ranks except for Diamond, where it got nerfed. Assuming that these patch notes are correct. I'm just going to reiterate, some of these patch notes may be wrong. They've had a history of switching the like previous numbers and the post numbers, and I'm not going to catch all of them, unfortunately. So take everything I read here with a grain of salt, because it could just be off or wrong. It looks like they upped the scaling for when you haste, so now Arbalist is kind of just like Ballista from Dooley. but probably still worse because it doesn't charge. So, unless this item got any more changes, I still don't see it being very good, but maybe. Beach Ball now has the toy type. I don't think there's much of a payoff for toys yet, but maybe there will be in the future. It says now it can haste toys in addition to aquatics, so there is already a little bit of a payoff, but this just makes Beach Ball more flexible, which is nice because it is right now basically locked into aquatics. Barrel got nerfed really hard. Thank God. They upped the cooldown by 1 second. They upped the base shielding by 10. Doesn't matter at all. Now, the scaling has to be from adjacent non-weapon items instead of any non-weapon item. So it scales a little faster from adjacent items, but since it can't count any weapon item on your board, this is going to make positioning harder. It's going to very much limit the scaling. Barrel is going to be a lot weaker. I don't know if Barrel's dead off of this. It will definitely be a lot weaker, which I'm very happy about. Barrel was one of my least favorite items to play against us when I'm playing a weapon build because it basically nullifies any weapon build unless you can burst them down before it scales. Ballista, the big boy, now has a slightly higher base damage at gold. This item is really, 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 really good in some circumstances and trash in most others. So I think this doesn't move the needle too much. It just makes a gold ballista a little bit better. In an ammo build, usually you're already getting enough multicast off of it to one-shot the enemy anyway, but this just makes it a little more consistent. Bayonet, which is like the little weapon that you just attach to another weapon and does extra damage, kind of just like a worse silencer in most cases. But there are some advantages running it. It got buffed a little bit at low levels, but nerfed at high levels. This seems to be a theme for this patch. Higher tier stuff is doing less damage than it used to, which I think is probably a good thing because I think the power level in the game in general is just a little high right now. So this is just a nerf to the power level of everything, assuming this is correct again. And we'll see that throughout this patch. So good changes. I really like the idea of just bringing all the power levels down a little bit. Bolas, same thing. Buffed at lower levels, nerfed at higher. Same with cannon. Assuming these are all right. I really am not 100% sure these are correct just based off what I'm reading, but we're going to take it with a grain of salt. Cannonade, just buffed at gold a little bit. Captain's Wheel, this is a big one. Captain's Wheel was bugged to count large items or vehicles in your stash, so you could use that to get a very low cooldown haste item. Now that no longer works, so you have to have a large item or a vehicle on the board to get the cooldown reduction. Makes Captain's Wheel less flexible, but it's still probably pretty good in specific builds. Concealed Dagger gets buffed at every tier, basically. Pretty much the only difference this makes is making the thief encounter a little harder, because nobody really runs Concealed Dagger outside of like maybe a day or two after you get it just to farm some gold. It can be nice to get a lot of gold out of it. I've run it for a few rounds just to get maybe 3 or 4 gold per fight. It's nice. Coral, this is the trash heal item that nobody takes ever. This one right here. They just gave it more healing at base, but it's still going to be trash and nobody's ever going to take it because it's just a worse seaweed. Coral Armor, that is also the trash. Yeah, this thing right here, it's the trash shield item that nobody ever takes. Because it's just like a worse turtle shell or a worse any other shield item, or a worse barrel, more like it. It just has slightly higher base shield. I still don't see anyone ever taking this item, honestly, but maybe like a buy-sell aquatic build can work for Vanessa now. I don't think so, though. Cutlass, slightly higher damage at base rank, bronze rank, I should say. Slightly lower damage at diamond, same with everything else. There's now an apparel type, and some items have it. I don't think there's much of a payoff for that yet, but probably in the future. Double barrel, slightly more damage at low ranks, slightly less, or actually significantly less damage at high ranks. So that's going to nerf the one weapon double barrel build you see going around a lot recently with Vanessa. Flagship gets a nice buff at silver and gold. should make the item a lot more playable. One of the big problems with Flagship is that the base damage is just really bad. So if you didn't have a way to scale it, it was pretty terrible. Now it basically does double damage at silver and 50% more damage at gold. That's a really nice buff. You can grappling hook a little earlier. The damage is a little higher, except for at diamonds, blah, 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 blah. The slow is pretty much the same. This item is pretty trash. The cooldown is just too long to make it good, but who cares? Grenade, more damage at low tiers, less damage at high tiers. Hand axe, this is like the weird single slow weapon that gives all your weapons damage. It now gives double the damage it did at low tiers. Still probably terrible. It's just way too slow, and there are better ways to scale your weapon damage in Vanessa. Honing Steel. They buffed the upgrade effect. I actually kind of liked Honing Steel. I know it was pretty hard to run in certain situations, but it's a nice early way to scale your damage as Vanessa, so welcome buff to see. You probably see a little bit more Honing Steel just early game to scale things like a Cutlass or a Katana, stuff like that. Ice Pick. This is like the weird small weapon on a 7-second cooldown that will freeze an item, and then like it gains damage whenever you freeze an item. Vanessa just didn't really have ever enough freeze synergy to make this work. There's really only like a couple of items in Vanessa that freeze. So I don't really see this making that big of a difference. Javelin, that's the medium ammo item that when you haste, it reloads. It does a lot more damage now at base levels. So you could probably run this in like an ammo build until you get something better, just because this does a lot of base damage if you have a way to haste. Like a 4-second cooldown too. So you could like maybe just run this as like a good medium ammo item that does damage. It's basically just like slightly worse than double barrel. Actually, it's kind of better than double barrel. Yeah, 4-second cooldown. You don't even need to reload it with haste. You could just reload it with like a powder flask. That's a lot of damage. Katana, slightly more damage at bronze, slightly less at diamonds. This makes pretty much no difference for Katana. Like, the only reason you play Katana is if you have a way to buff the damage other than its base damage, or you need a really fast weapon for some other reason. Long John got a really, really big buff. One, the base damage is just up from, well, at bronze at least. At silver, it's slightly less. But the scaling is like way higher until you get the diamonds. Plus 40 and plus 60 at bronze and silver makes Lang Zhan like actually way more playable early game. I don't know if it's any good. It's still like a really slow item, but you see Lang Zhan from time to time. And this makes it pretty much better for the entire game. So, good change. Nesting Doll gains the toy type. Nesting Doll is one of the worst items in the game, in my opinion. There's just not really that much synergy for a fast ammo item outside of, I don't really know. I don't really see the point of this item, but maybe we'll see it in the future. Pet Rock is now a toy. It does slightly more damage. The crit chance actually got scaled up pretty significantly. That's a nice change. I sometimes run Pet Rock if I really need crit chance. You can run it with conjunction with Vanessa's Amulet, and you get a pretty significant amount of crit chance for your whole board. So not a bad little item to just pop in if you really need crit early. And there's really not that many other friends in Vanessa you want to run anyway, so it's nice to have. Piranhas. Piranha's got a nice little glow up. I still think they're pretty bad, but now they have a base crit chance of 20, which actually gives them like some chance to crit if you don't have any other crit enablers. These are kind of just still pretty terrible. The base damage is just way too low. Critting dealing double damage is like only really good if you have a way to scale its damage with augmented weapons or something similar. It's just really hard to run piranhas. I feel like they need more help than this, but this does make them significantly better than they were, which I still think is kind of bad. Pistol Sword. This is like a medium ammo item that scales when you use other ammo items. I kind of just felt like this one always got outshined by things like Repeater or Blunderbuss or Throwing Knives or Double Barrel. It was just hard to make it work. But now it scales pretty much way better at gold tier than it did before, so maybe you can see Pistol Sword slightly more often. Pufferfish got a much needed nerf. This never should have been buffed to 6 seconds to begin with. 8 seconds is going to slow it down significantly, especially considering that we saw nerfs to a lot of the other shield items in this patch. So thank God for this nerf. It's still probably playable, but it slows it down significantly. Revolver, slightly more damage until you get the diamonds. You know the deal. Same with rifle. Rowboat was unplayable before. Maybe now it's playable. Let's see. They reduced the cooldown. Now it charges your adjacent items instead of just hasting your small items. That's pretty good. And now if you have more than 5 unique types, 5 or more unique types, this item gets reduced. Oh, that's really cool. Okay. So now if you have like a lot of different types of items on your board, which should be pretty easy because like friend, aquatic, ammo, weapon, stuff like that, that's pretty easy to get all 5 of these, I think. And it will be on a 4-second cooldown. So 4-second cooldown to charge adjacent items up to 3 seconds is a pretty nice item. We may see this run in like boulder builds or something like that. I'm not sure. It's cool though. Makes Rowboat a lot more flexible than it was before. Previously, it was just like a worse water wheel or a worse beach ball, honestly. Seaweed, the base heal is now just way less. I'm assuming this still scales. It doesn't say. I would doubt they would change that, but this just slows Seaweed down a little bit. With all the other nerfs to Aquatic Vanessa, this is probably not that big of a deal, but it definitely hurts the build a little bit. Just enchantment changes for Sextant. This item was pretty niche. Shark Claws, more damage at base tier, less at higher. I really like Shark Claws as like an early tempo weapon, but it really has no place on your board past day 3 or 4, and I don't think this makes that much of a difference to that. Shark Ray has a slightly lower cooldown. Damage is flat now, and the scaling is slightly higher. Shark Ray was usually just way too slow to run in a haste deck or a haste build. Now it's less bad. I think it's still pretty bad, but it does a lot of damage now. It scales pretty well. Doubling the scaling is a lot. So maybe you see this played more often. Shovel, there's nothing to say about Shovel. You never run Shovel for the damage. It's just for the econ. Shoeblade now is an apparel. Does slightly more damage. This item is still terrible. Silencer. They nerfed the damage it gives specifically at diamonds. That pretty much makes no difference. Spyglass got a bug fix. Submarine now has higher base damage. Thank goodness. It kind of suffered from the same issue that Flagship had, where you got it and it just did so little damage that it was hard to kill people if you didn't have a way to scale it. So that's a nice little buff for that. Swashbuckle now has the apparel tag. Switchblade does more damage. Kind of nice, but the reason you run Switchblade is to buff other weapons, not itself. So who really cares? Torpedo! Torpedo is one of my pet favorite items for Vanessa, but it's really, really hard to run. Big cooldown reduction, 2 seconds off that. That's nice. Base damage is flat now. Makes it a little easier to run at silver. And the scaling is slightly higher, not that significantly higher. So Torpedo, I think, is just a lot easier to run now. It's a good finisher for a ammo build or an aquatic build. I'm assuming this still reloads when you use a large item. It doesn't say, but I don't think they would change that. Trebuchet, slightly better at pretty much every tier. So that is a nice little buff to Trebuchet. Doesn't really move the needle too much, I don't think. Turtle Shell, you can't get it at silver anymore, so now it's a lot more rare, and the shield scaling doesn't scale as hard. So nice nerf to Turtle Shell. Along with all the other nerfs to Aquatic Vanessa, I think this makes the build a lot more manageable. It's still going to be okay. Notably, no Pearl changes this patch, or at least not that were included in the patch notes. We'll see if they actually did nerf Pearl. I still think Pearl is probably still a little too good, but maybe it's not too good if they nerfed everything else. We'll see. That's just a slightly annoying bug for Wanted Poster that they fixed. Okay. So big changes for Vanessa seems to be mostly just nerfing the aquatic build, making her weapons a little less terrible and making the ammo builds a little bit more interesting. Not really as many big changes to her as many people would have expected, just a lot of little things. But it does give her some more options to play around with, maybe like a rowboat build, or maybe like a submarine and torpedo build. That one seems pretty interesting too. We'll see. Okay, Pyg. Pyg is where I think the biggest changes occurred, at least from what I saw in my brief glance to the patch notes. Apropos chapeau. That is like the weird hat that nobody ever built. How do you spell this item? Apropos. Okay, this thing. This thing is unplayable in its current state. Now it actually looks kind of interesting. So it's an apparel type. And I think it counts itself. And now it gives your weapons damage, your heal items heal, and your shield items shield. So it's kind of like a little, it's basically a Ganjo. But it gains multicast for each type of item you have. So you can get this up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 multicast, which is a lot. 5 multicast giving all of your items this many stats is insanely good. I mean, it's a tempo play for sure. You don't see this on anyone's board late game, but if you get this early and you have enough types to make it multicast a lot, this is a lot of scaling for not that big of a cooldown. So I will try this out for sure because it's a lot of fun. ATM and now has a tech type. Probably doesn't matter too much, but maybe. Okay, so they totally reworked Beast of Burden. This is like a really weird item now. It's no longer buy sell, which is kind of a shame, but it probably opens up Beast of Burden for more pivots if you get it into like the mid or the late game. As previously, you really couldn't pivot into Beast of Burden if you got it after like day 3 or 4, really. So now it just does a flat amount of damage, and it will gain a type for whatever item you buy. So like if you buy an ATM, it will gain the tech type. And now it gains +1 multicast for every type it has. So I'm not 100% sure how many types are in the game right now, but it's north of like 10. There's a lot. So you could potentially get the Beast of Burden up to like maybe 10 multicast, which is a really big multicast item. But it's gonna, I'm gonna have to experiment with this. It's gonna be a really, really, really weird item to play around with. My gut says it's really good, but you definitely need a way to scale the damage because its base damage is terrible. I mean, with a lot of multicast, it's not too bad, but you definitely want some ways to scale it. Belt now has the apparel tag. That's nice. New item called Boomerang. It's a weapon and a toy. This one seems really actually cool. It does not that much damage, but who cares? Because when you win a fight with a monster, you get a random loot item, and loot items can be really, really, really good. So I think you're going to want to keep a boomerang in your inventory and just put it on your board whenever you fight a monster. And if you get like a feather or a gunpowder for specific builds or things like that, you're really happy. So definitely going to be playing around with this. It seems like a great little tool. I'm assuming it's a small item. It doesn't say. It's either small or medium. It's definitely not large. So yeah, I think you're always going to want to have one of these in your inventory and just throw it out on your board if you can fit it. Because loot items can be really good, and getting a random one every day is pretty nice. Booby Trap now against the toy type. Not that interesting. Bootstraps. I don't even know what this item is. I don't think I've ever seen it before. Oh, these. Okay, yeah. So now every 50 gold you spend, upgrade an item of a lower tier. So this was like a cool way for Pyg to level up its items in his inventory, because Pyg's whole thing is like econ. It seems pretty strong, honestly. If you get like a diamond bootstraps and you just have a ton of gold, you can level up a lot of your items for free, basically. So definitely going to be playing around with that. That's a really nice item, I think. Brass Knuckles, you know the deal. More damage, less damage. Caltrops is now a toy? I'm not sure about that. I think this is like a weapon that violates the Geneva Convention, but sure, it's a toy as well. Cargo shorts now are apparel. Duct tape is not a pig item, but go off. I mean, you like it in pig, but it's not a pig item, unless it is now. Unless they changed it, that'd be kind of funny. But now it shields like way less. So except for the only reason you ran duct tape is if you had a way to scale the shielding, basically, or you needed the shield procs. Flail, more damage, less damage. Ganjo now has significantly higher scaling. Holy moly. This is great. I already liked Ganjo a lot, and it got buffed quite a bit, especially at bronze. I think this makes Ganjo really good for tempo. Gumball Machine is now a toy and it has a lower cooldown. You never, ever, 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 ever ran Gumball Machine on your board. It's an inventory item, so yay, I guess. Fixed bugs with Deadly Jabalion Drum. Didn't know what they were. Loop got it got reverted to its previous thing. Okay, so Loop now is really good again. Your small items have +1, +2 value. You always want to have a Loop in your inventory, and then you can just buy and sell small items for profits. Really, really good change for Loop if you like Loop. If you don't like Loop, this is going to be annoying. Marbles is now a toy. Model Ship is now a toy. Adjacent toys have +1 multicast. It no longer charges on... I don't really know how to feel about this. Maybe there's like a toy pig build that works now. I'll have to see. I'm really not sure. 1 multicast is a lot, but I don't think many of the toys are actually like that strong. I guess Booby Trap is like nice to gain multicast. Boomerang maybe. I don't know. We'll have to see. I don't know if a toy build has enough enablement yet. I'm assuming Yo-Yo is a toy, right? Yeah, okay. So Yo-Yo is probably the only thing that makes model ship toy builds maybe playable. We'll have to see. Money Tree got buffed. Who cares? Monocle now is an apparel. Who cares? Piggles are a toy. Piggy Bank's a toy. Pinata's a toy. Robe is apparel. Silk Scarf, no longer just silk. Apparel, blah, blah, blah. No major changes there. Slingshot is a toy. That's actually a pretty good multicast item, too. Or an item to get multicast. Snow Globe is a toy. This item already gained multicast, so it's not that big of a deal. But now it only freezes medium or small items. It can't freeze large items, so that's nice. Stopwatch is apparel. Tusked Helm is apparel. Vending machine. The enchantment was bugged for golden. Doesn't matter. Vineyard. I think this bug affected Landscraper too, but Landscraper and Vineyard had a bug where they would lose all of the value they gained if you actually used them, so they're basically worthless. Assuming that this is actually fixed, maybe they're playable now? Probably not. Like, value pig builds are not that good. They need more payoff, and I don't think this fixes them. We'll see. Weights looks like it got a pretty huge nerf. Actually, no. This is actually... It's not a nerf. Well, it is a nerf in some situations, but it could be a huge buff in some other situations. So now it gains pretty much the same... Oh, no, it gains more healing and damage, so that's nice. It scales your healing and damage faster. And it only charges 1 second, but it's if you overheal and not if you heal at max health. So the big difference here is if you have like a 400 heal succulents, but you're 1 HP below max health, you wouldn't gain the charge when that succulents went off because you weren't at max health. So now, every time you overheal, it will charge. So this makes the healing a lot better it's better against things like poison where you're never really at max health. But it's slightly worse in like the builds where you had a ton of shield, so were always at max health. I think this makes the item way more flexible, and honestly, overall, the charge is probably going to be going off a lot more often. So I don't think this is like actually a nerf at all, really. It should just be power neutral to maybe even power up. And Yo-Yo is now a toy. So biggest changes to Pyg were definitely just the Beast of Burden rework is huge. The Apropos Chapeau is basically just like a better Gonjo now. Or, well, it's a different type of Gonjo. And then like maybe we have some toy builds going off with the model ship. And then Loop and the other item, what was it called? Bootstraps. Yeah, Loop and Bootstraps now are back and playable and quite good, I would say. But yeah, that's all the Pyg changes. And then let's finally get to Dooley. So Dooley, I think Dooley has been public enemy number 1 for community sentiment for ever, basically, for a long time. We'll see if this fixes those changes. Armored Core gets a really, really significant nerf to the base shield. Actually, wait. Yeah. To the base shield at higher tiers, and then to the scaling at higher tiers. This makes the Armored Core force field build just like scale even worse. It's better at lower tiers though. So honestly, leveling up your core past like gold is probably not necessary anymore. Like you probably don't need to get your Armored Core to diamonds anymore. If you want to play like the force field build. Combat Core now has a longer cooldown. That's like this is like the big item that also counts as a core. I didn't see too many builds with this. There were some specific builds that could be like really, really strong with this, but now it's going to be worse because the cooldown is longer. The damage doesn't matter at all because this scales itself. So Combat Core is significantly weaker, I would say, with a 1 second longer cooldown. Critical Core damage is lower at high tiers. Same with the Core. Ignition Core, the burn got reduced by 2 at all levels. Honestly, I think Ignition Core needed more nerfs than that, but maybe we see them lower down here because 2 burn is like a lot, but not that much in the grand scheme of things. And then Weaponized Core, same thing, higher damage and then lower damage at high tiers. And then the weapon scaling actually got buffed because Weapons Core was pretty weak, honestly. At least the scaling portion of it was. Okay, so here's the item changes. Alpha Ray damage is down, basically. And the scaling is down pretty significantly, especially at high tiers. This is a massive nerf to Alpha Ray. Diamond Alpha Ray could give you so much free scaling that you basically needed no other real scaling in your builds. Now it's like nothing. So huge nerf to Alpha Ray. Probably needed, but it definitely hurts the item a lot. Arc Blaster, it basically loses half of its damage at low tiers and then a little bit less at higher tiers. Good nerf to Arc Blaster. This item was just doing way too much damage. Let's take a small item with a relatively short cooldown. Atomic Clock. Oh no. Cooldown got nerfed to 2 seconds. That's such a big nerf to the clock. It's weird because I feel like Clock was only really good in very specific circumstances when you could reload it or give it a lot of ammo. And it was really, really, really good then, but other than that, it was pretty bad. So interesting that they nerfed this so hard, honestly. That's like a really, really hard nerf. Barbed Wire now scales slightly less at higher tiers. Doesn't really matter. I don't think that many people were running Barbed Wire to begin with, honestly. Blast Doors got nerfed pretty significantly. Way less shield at pretty much every tier, assuming these patch notes are correct. Like we said, they could be totally wrong because I think it looks like it's fine though. I really didn't like Blast Doors, but I saw some people use it to counter like burn Dooley or weapon spam Dooley, so we'll see it. Brick Buddy got nerfed not that much. This is not that big of a deal. I kind of think Brick Buddy already got hit really hard last patch, so not really sure if this deserved another nerf, but maybe it was still a little too OP. Bunker. Bunker was really wonky. I think it was basically unplayable. Now it just gives you less damage overall. I really don't know how to feel about this item. I know that there's some like interesting things you can do with this, but I have no idea how strong this is. I'll have to play around with it. I really have no idea. 40% less damage is a lot less damage, but I really just don't know how to calculate that, honestly. Chris Army Knife, it just got nerfed. It doesn't really matter. You just run Chris Army Knife as like a tag bot, basically. He's like, he enables certain items. That's really the only purpose of him. Chrono Barrier. Chrono Barrier now only affects non-tech items, and then it also affects your items. So this got the fort treatment to where now it will increase your cooldowns as well, unless they're tech, which is notably the core, but there are some other tech items. And that's about it. So this should make Chrono Barrier way less frustrating because dualies aren't just going to slot it in if they really need to. They have to kind of play around that cooldown increase effect as well. Cybersecurity, this thing was unplayable. I still think it's unplayable. The cooldown is just way too long. Unless they made other changes to this that weren't noted, this item is still just terrible. Dooley Scarf, this is just an anti-freeze item. No reason to even care at all about any of the other things. Fiber Optics is back. Fiber Optics is a great little item to enable spam, basically. It's when you use your leftmost item, charge your rightmost item, and now it is back. So more weapon spam, more item spam is possible with this. So we should be seeing some interesting combos with Fiber Optics. Claw Rinse, the scaling got buffed. This item is basically just like a worse... oh shoot, what is it? There's another friend that does basically what this does, but like way better. I'm blanking on the name though. But now the scale's a little higher. Claw Arm was basically unplayable, unfortunately. Now the scaling is 4 times as much as it was, basically, at silver at least, or at gold at least. I still think this item is pretty unplayable, but maybe it's like a good way to scale a specific weapon. Quill LEDs got nerfed again. Wow. Longer cooldown. Dinosaur, just flatten the damage out. No! First Aiden! Aww. Okay. First Aiden needed a nerf. It was one of the strongest small items in the game. It was a fast, low cooldown friend small item that hasted and healed. I think we're all a little sad to see this nerf though. First Aiden was fun. Granola Bar got buffed. This item is awful, especially now that most items aren't tools anymore, so it's really hard to get the ammo scaling up. This item is basically unplayable in my opinion. Armadillo got nerfed pretty significantly, 2-second longer cooldown. This makes it even harder to achieve the infinite Armadillo dream. It's still possible, but it's going to be a lot harder now. So way less common to see infinite Armadillo, except for with knife tricks, which hopefully got changed, but I don't think it did. Induction Agents got nerfed. I really don't think this item needed to be nerfed. But it did, so no use crying over spilt milk. Same with Isochronic Freezer. Got a 1-second nerf. It looks like a lot of his small items just got cooldown nerfs just because core spam was too OP. So it's probably necessary, but I feel like these items on their own just weren't that good. Maybe they're just nerfing the core spam builds. Laser Pistol, the damage got buff nerfed. This item is basically unplayable. It's just like well, maybe it's better now, but it's like a fairly low cooldown small weapon. There are just better options for Dooley. Mech Moles. They doubled the scaling at pretty much every tier. This item was really bad though, and I still think it's really bad. It is a better way to scale your weapons now that Alpha Ray got nerfed, but I just don't see it happening. Missiles got hit by the nerf bat too. 4-second cooldown from 3 seconds. That's a really big nerf. The damage numbers don't matter. You used missiles to enable things like metronome, pulse rifle, things like that. So pretty big nerf to missiles. Mamasaur, the damage scaling when you destroy an item is slightly higher at gold, but slightly lower at diamonds. This is actually just a Mamasaur nerf at diamond, which is fine, I guess. I don't think the item was like that OP. It was good. I don't think it was OP. Nitrogen Hammer now freezes a small or medium item, and it gains damage when you freeze. The scaling is up. I never saw anyone run this item ever. It probably still never gets run, but maybe. Omega Ray. The scaling is up. This gives Burn Dooley some more options. I feel like Burn Dooley wasn't running Omega Ray anymore just because it was a little too slow. So now maybe he runs Omega Ray. I kind of feel like Burn Dooley needed more nerfs. Maybe with everything else he got nerfed enough, but I don't know. Yeah. I'm not sure about that. I feel like Burn Dooley may not have been nerfed as much as she needed to be. Pierre Conditioner now only freezes medium or small items. I don't really know how to feel about that. I feel like Pierre Conditioner wasn't really that good, honestly. After the companion core nerfs, he just wasn't playable that much. Pulse Rifle got a pretty big nerf. Cooldown went up, damage went down. This item was in every single Dooley build just because it was like a really, really fast item that charged your core a lot. So now that's significantly worse. Still probably pretty good. Rocket Launcher, you can get it earlier, and the damage is lower. I guess nobody really played Rocket Launcher. I mean, some people did. I don't know. Don't know how to feel about this one, honestly. Schematics. This was a completely unplayable item, and now it has a purpose. So previously it gave your tools and vehicles crit chance, which was nothing. And now it gives you a random tech item when you level up. So that's kind of cool as like an econ item for Dooley. Dooley never really had any econ items, other than like crypto and memory card, I think. So some more eco for Dooley, which I think is nice. Security camera, still useless. Never run this item. Wallace scales faster. That's good. Wallace was pretty bad. Water Cooler. Water Cooler now has a lower cooldown at higher tiers. Yes, we did it. Woo! You can only get him at silver though. Aw. And he gets more max HP. No, this is the same. Okay, so Water Cooler now is a little better late game in a friend build. Is probably not that good still, but I love Water Cooler, so I'm gonna play him more if I can. And then Welding Helmet, terrible item. Nobody ever ran it. It's worse at higher tiers, which it definitely didn't need to be. All right, so that's Dooley. Overall, the theme seemed to just be slow down core spam builds. So a lot of his small and medium items got a little bit higher cooldowns. So that's going to slow down the core spam. I'm a little worried they didn't nerf burn core enough, but maybe with all of the other changes, it's not that good anymore. I was hoping they would hit burn core a little bit more. It's actually kind of surprising they hit armored core so hard when they only hit burn core like so little. This is barely like any nerf to the core itself. So keep an eye out for burn core. I think it still might be good, especially with the Omega Ray buff. Maybe this is like playable now. Other than that, Dooley just got brought down a little bit. Not as much as I think some people were hoping, but all of these cooldown nerfs on all of his best items or good items will make him significantly slower, I think, especially in the early game. So just to keep an eye out for that. I still think Dooley's good. He may still even be the best hero. All right, and then other item changes. Let's not go too long on these because I think these are mostly just like small changes. That doesn't matter. Cryo Sleeve had a bug where the freeze reduction was applied to enemy items. I actually noticed this and reported it, so maybe I'm the one who got it fixed. Probably not, but We'll see. A new item called Dragon's Breath. It has an 8-second cooldown. It burns 8. And when you would use adjacent item or dragon item, this gains burn for the fight. Okay, so now there's like dragon synergy. I don't think there's that many dragon items, are there? No, there's only like a couple. This is probably set up for the future. But maybe there's like a new dragon monster now. Dragon Whelp has a lower cooldown at higher tiers. This is the item that does like bonus damage or bonus burn based on how much damage it does. Yeah, this item could be really, really good in some situations, but it's just a little too slow. Now that its cooldown scales down to 7 seconds, maybe it's playable. We'll see. Just a lot of tech adding to a lot of items that nobody ever runs, or most people don't run. Teddy is now a toy. It gains the effect where if you use another toy, friend, or ammo item, it gets charged. It used to just affect adjacent friend or ammo items, so it's slightly more flexible. And then now it just has a base 25% crit chance instead of gaining crit throughout the fight. So I never actually got to play with Teddy because it's a very, very, very rare item. I think you can only really get this from the Thieves Guild, which is already like super rare. And then it wasn't really common in the Thieves Guild anyway, so. I've never gotten to run Teddy before. I think this is a buff, but I have no idea, honestly. Wrench and Hammer are back. These are really, really good items, and if Boiler Broom Brawler has both of these again, I actually don't know if they had Wrench before. But they definitely had Hammer before, right? So if Boiler Room Brawler has Hammer again, these items are disgustingly, insanely good. So you're going to want to be fighting the Boiler Room Brawler if they have them. This one says, if you level up and you have at least 3 tools, upgrade an item of a lower tier. Really, really, really good. And then the Wrench, I think, does something similar. Yeah, at the start of each day, upgrade a tool of a lower tier. Not quite as good because tools are less common, but still a really good item. So going to be fun to see those. Wand is now a toy. That's good. Okay, and then there's just a couple more skill changes. So let's look at these real quick. It looks like Hardened Shield is only available at gold and diamond tier now, so it's going to be a lot rarer. This is a really good skill, so it makes sense. Dual Wield, which is now Mr. Moo's skill instead of the item that gave you damage based on how much ammo you have. Now it says if you have exactly 2 weapons, your items gain crit chance. That's a lot of crit chance. And 2 weapons isn't that hard to just like limit yourself to. So this could be interesting. Dual Wield is going to be like really, really, really rare though, because you barely ever fight Mr. Moo. I don't think it said they re-enabled the Thieves Guild medallion either, so it's going to be really uncommon to see this, but it seems like a good skill now. Waters of Infinity, it just has slightly more regen. Who cares? That passive was pretty much worthless. Regen is like not that strong after you get past the mid game. Cryo Mastery, the first 3 to 6 times you shield, freeze an item. That's pretty good. That's actually really good, yeah. Freezing an item for 2 seconds off of a skill is nice. This was just like a really buggy skill that slowed all items. It looks like it works better now. Building Crescendo, it got nerfed again. I still think it's probably really good. It only gives your item 3% crit chance at gold and 6 at diamonds. And you still start negative 100% crit chance. So it's going to take a long time to actually get to high amounts of crit chance. But I still think this skill is probably really, really, really good in like spam builds and completely useless outside of spam builds. So I still really don't know what they're doing with this skill. It should probably just be removed. I think it's still really insanely good in certain builds. Everything else looks like just like some bug fixes. So not that big of a deal. And then the Veteran Octopus, his weapon actually has damage now, which is, he's still one of the easiest fights in the game, but maybe he's a little harder now that his weapon will do damage. So cool. That's the patch. Not nearly as big as I was thinking based off of how long the patch notes are. but I think that this is a much needed change to a lot of the stronger items, just bringing them down a little bit. And then we have some really cool changes to things like Beast of Burden, some other reworks for some items that really needed some love. So we'll see how that works. And then having some items come back into the meta after being disabled for a while makes it's going to be a little more diverse than it was. Overall, not as big of a patch as I was expecting, but I think it has some much needed changes. The biggest changes are honestly going to be off of these enchantments. We're going to have to see how this affects the meta and how these actually work. And then there was one other change that I was really interested in. What was it? Oh yeah, the level up rewards actually that's going to slow down the game a lot too, because you won't be leveling up nearly as fast. Basically, you were getting like 1 free XP every time you leveled up, where now you will no longer get that. So you're probably going to be 1 to 2 to maybe even 3 levels lower than you were in the late game. Yeah, other than that, really interesting patch. I'm going to be playing around with a lot of the new things. Pyg looks like he has a lot of options now that I don't think he had before, so really excited to try those out. I love Pyg. He's my favorite hero. And Dooley's weaker, which I think everyone really wanted. So, yeah. Let's dig into this and see what happens. It's going live tomorrow, February 5th. So we'll be playing some games then and hopefully get out some fun videos soon. All right, thanks for watching. If you liked it, feel free to subscribe and check out any of my other videos. We have a lot of Bazaar videos out already, so you're probably already watching this you probably already watched those if you're watching this. If not, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Have a good night.